What's up, Chris? So
What's going on, Jay?
I clicked record and up pops the update button.
Oh
Right? It's
no, of
blocking your
course.
face right now. So let's get rid of that right now.
That's a
Okay? There we
good
go. All
plan.
right,
That's a good
there we go.
plan.
What's up, Chris? We are
Hey,
moving.
what's going on, Jay? Yeah, we're talking about different kinds of
2026.
updates. Yeah, exactly. 2026 updates today, and what that means, right? We're going to focus on a thing that's really important to lots and lots of different folks over the next couple episodes. Today, we're going to Jay. I think the best way to describe it is today we're going to define the problem, and then on our next show we're going to solve the problem, or at least do the best we can. Not all problems can be solved so easily, but that's exactly what our intention is. So welcome everyone to On the Rocks. Today we're talking about customer acquisition costs.
Yeah,
As
much
you,
like the economy, costs are rising. So
yeah,
are, so is CAC. So
Yep, that's right. And everyone feels it, right? That's the same thing too. Ad costs are up. Your performance, like it's inconsistent. You don't know what you're getting between one day and another. Your cash all of a sudden starting to feel a little tighter than it used to be. Um, you know, an important thing to know, right? Like revenue growth used to be like that used to mean your business was super healthy, right? You just adding on revenue, this is a good deal. But now it's not. It doesn't necessarily equate to financial health anymore. Revenue growth might be a problem, and that's part of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about some warning signs that show up long before it's time to like fold the business or sell it to your neighbor, give them a lemon, that kind of thing, right? So this is the thing that we'll talk about today is not about getting more customers. It's about what each customer is actually worth once the dust settles, once all that activity's done, right? And we're going to frame that in the conversation around acquisition costs. But obviously, if you're talking about what each customer is actually worth, like that's your LTV, your long-term customer value, right? Those two things do really go hand in hand because as those customer acquisition costs continue to rise, you need that LTV to be a little bit higher as well. Otherwise, as we'll talk about later, might not be worth even acquiring that customer in the first place. So let's talk about why that CAC has quietly become one of the biggest balance sheet risks in the e-commerce and actually truly like more broadly, just like in any kind of business
for
space.
sure.
Uh, Customer acquisition costs are obviously they're rising for e-commerce providers, but they're really rising for everybody. So,
You know, and
uh,
let's face it, Chris. We've been saying revenue is a vanity metric for months, and now we
years.
look at that. Everybody's revenue's up. Revenue's loud, but cash problems are not. They're very silent
That's right.
until they're not. When it becomes a
That's right.
problem, they become much louder than that revenue growth. So let's find out why cash is quiet and find ways around it. And that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, right. And so, an important thing about customer acquisition costs are they do what Jay's just talking about. They're front loaded. They're cash out today. So your ads are paid immediately. When you actually sell the product, right? You're selling that. You're paying for the fulfillment. You're paying for your 3PL. You're paying for all that processing. You're paying for that pretty quickly. And hopefully you've built your business such that you're getting paid by customers kind of straight away as well. But sometimes that revenue does take a couple days to get to you, and you've already kind of incurred all of those other costs. And in some situations, again, maybe you're on that 2 week Amazon still, right? You're not getting that cash a couple days later. You're getting that cash a couple weeks later, and obviously can have a really significant impact on your cash flow. And so, as you're spending those money on ads, right? Everybody's looking at your ROAS. You see this. All right, we spent $50 and we got in $150. That three is not that great, but the next day it was $250 for that $50. So that five, that's feeling pretty good. But that's just like cash that went out and hasn't come back yet. And so, like Jay mentioned at the top here, or at the beginning of this conversation, like your acquisition costs, those problems show up first in your cash flow forecasts, not in your results, because you start to see that cash position get a little tighter and a little tighter and a little tighter. Now, one of the things that can be even worse is what we'll talk about next, and that's that customer acquisition costs on their own, they aren't that big of a deal. But what is a big deal is the customer that doesn't ever come back. So you acquire that customer, and they're just a one-time customer. And those one-time buyers, Jay, and you talk about this more, I'm sure. Like those can be a real big margin trap. Do you want to talk about why acquiring customers might actually end up being a problem?
Well, let's face it though. A first-time buyer is not a customer. They're on a trial. So they want to see how things are working out. They want to see how that product is. Does it kind of like our conversation yesterday about our winter shorts, is that the right fit for the right time, and a lot of times it's not. And now that one-time buyer that you spent $35 to acquire is sending back the product, and you're paying to ship it back. So now you paid shipping both ways, and now it's got to touch more hands in the warehouse, whether that's your warehouse or 3PL. So you're paying for that, and then they got to process the returns, evaluate, can it be reused? So that, $50 contribution margin could very well become negative $50 at that point. So one-time customers are very tricky, and you have to hit it just right to make that work.
Right, yeah.
So I had something else, but I don't want to jump ahead yet. So go ahead.
No, that's fine. Yeah, first time orders can often, like you're describing, Jay, they can often be break even or maybe even negative, especially if you're giving that product away either at a really deep discount because you're advertising like it's Black Friday, right? And and you just lowered prices significantly, and I was waiting around for the right time to catch that product on sale so I could I don't know, put it into my home automation setup or something, right? Like maybe that may or may not have happened in real life, right? And as long as the stuff that goes along with that is really working really well, and again, Jay, we'll talk about that in a minute. Like that may be great, but if you paid $35 to acquire that customer, and now you got to ship it to them, you got to make sure that you have a support page that helps them to understand what to do when motion sensors and motion censoring, and what to do when now you have to return the product, or maybe your product's not all that expensive and you don't even want to. Like what happens that just wipes your gross margin away.
Right.
And so unfortunately, one-time buyers, those first-time buyers, they don't really, those practicers and testers, they don't really help your growth. They just replace your churn. Right? They just get some stuff out of the warehouse for you for a short period of time, but they may not be great for you in the long term. And so,
and you can replace that churn forever, Chris. You just can't afford it forever.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, it's absolutely true. Is that negative returns they just don't work out. Right. That's exactly the point here. Right. And so growing revenue, especially revenue that has low repeat rates, it increases risk for exactly that reason. Yep. You just are exposing yourself to this opportunity. Like, sure, you may deliver a fantastic product and it may be perfect, and that person may be like me and be like, you know what, I really loved my motion sensor and it's working fantastically. I'm going to tell all my friends about it. Your acquisition costs for your next customer just got to be lighter because I've had such a good experience. But they don't all work that way, and that's why it's this increased risk. But like Jay was talking about, referencing shorts, right? If my Viore short that I'm wearing today, right? If I really enjoyed that first purchase and that buttery soft fabric against my skin makes me feel like it's a warm winter day around the campfire when I'm sitting outside or something, right? And I really enjoy that experience enough that I want to buy another pair or a different variety or whatever it may be, right? I've suddenly become significantly more valuable because because that risk is so much lower now that I'm not just a first time customer. I'm a repeat customer. And so a business that becomes dependent on constant paid acquisition is not going to be a successful one. And Jay, I think that's the point that we want to highlight today. Um, and some of those things, like some growth, right? Again, if you're just adding new customer, new customer, new customer, new customer, that may hide some other kinds of erosion, right? Some
Mm-hmm.
other problems within your business. And especially if it's if it's on the back end of that stuff, right? You may see that front end revenue number go great, but if your customer experience is going poorly, like you may see other problems may be happening behind the scenes that just aren't seeing in the same way.
And it could
And
take
so
months for those negative things to show up because of when, first of all, you have the lag in getting the products back, processing the refunds, things like that. So it could lag 2 months behind the sale and be way off. So, you
yeah,
know, there are a lot of situations like that that you just might not be aware of in the finance office.
right, of course. And the unfortunate thing about these acquisition costs, right, is that uh, is that they're just getting bigger, and they're likely not to be coming back down. And so, Jay, it's not like I could sit here and tell you that customer acquisition costs are like interest rates. At some point in time, they're gonna cut them. Like that's just not true for customer acquisition costs, right? They're not going back down. Platform saturation across both all of their platforms, right? Meta, Google, TikTok, Amazon, like those they're already winning, right? They're not going to get any cheaper. It's going to be as more brands start to use those same platforms, as more opportunity comes to get into the face of a consumer, right? That ad space is going to become more expensive. Um, as Meta, as Google, as they continue to roll out better AI features, right? As we've talked about on this show lots of times, as the tools that are at your fingertips there to be able to try to reach customers is better. As those tools are better, as those tools improve, the cost is also going to increase. Those things just aren't free. Um, what that means is there is a couple different things too. It makes it a little more difficult to understand, like what costs help to get you what customer. It makes the data a little bit less clear, less reliable. It's noisier, um, and then of course, like when you start to have all this extra money that you're pumping into ads, like it means that creating them just gets to be a burden, and you may have some burnout associated with the creation of new ad stuff, and all of those types of different things will lead you to now you have to find somebody else to create your product, right? Or you have to pay them a little bit more, not your product, but your ad, right? You may need to find somebody else to help you support your ad, right? You may need to find somebody else to be able to do this, and those things will all slowly push push those customer acquisition costs up even more. And so, Jay, as we think about the that why CAC isn't coming back down, what other things do you think are relevant there?
Well, part of this is people have built forecasts and their budgets for next year, and they were hopeful that the CAC was going to go back down. And
All right.
first of all, that's just being,
Yeah.
a lot of nostalgia there. They're hoping for those good old times from 2 years ago when they had lower CAC.
Yeah.
But honestly, you're working with fiction, and it's time to bring those numbers back to reality. The numbers that we have are here, and they're, like you said, they're going up because of the competition. There are so many more businesses right now that are looking for those same buyers, and that's what's driving up the cost because competition drives up costs. I mean, if there wasn't that competition, the numbers would be flat, and that's just the way it is. And the e-commerce world, and in reality, all business today is trying to
Yeah.
get that next customer because the way the economy is, the way things are rolling, we don't know what's going to happen, and you have to take care of today.
Yeah.
So go out, get that customer, and pay whatever it's going to cost you to get that customer. Is that right? No, but that's what's going on, and firms are not looking back at it. They're just they're willing to take that on but they don't know what they're truly risking, and that's what we're exposing today.
Yeah, exactly. That there's a lot of risk there. And a lot of that comes down to ultimately, and Jay, we both talked about this, right? That acquisition environment is structurally different now than it was before, right? As we jumped into in COVID times, right? Everybody was just buying online, and they needed the thing that they needed, and they needed it right away, and so you could once you got your product there, that was amazing, right? You could anybody could find you pretty quickly, but now as people start to mimic some of those other products, as there are just more brands competing for the same buyer's attention, right? Even if it's something that's like relatively different, right? Maybe maybe it could be like there's lots of people have lots of different interests, right? And
Yeah.
so your Facebook feed can only have so many I don't know, so many short ads before you as the consumer are just over it, right? And there are so many different brands, especially um, as some as you've seen success in some of these areas, right? As you see some of that competition too from other countries now, where maybe they're having to spend their money a little bit differently because of some of the tariff concerns that they've run into, right? There may be the market itself may just be it's just more flooded. Um, and so I think that there's a couple things that circles back to, right? It highlights again, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more next week. It highlights again why it's so important to really target and know exactly the type of customer you're going for, and understanding exactly who that customer is. Now, one one of the things that I want to make sure that we talk about today is one lever that's definitely available in this situation, and that is that customer retention is not just some financial lever, right? It's not a thing you pull to make things work. It's not. I mean, it's not a marketing tactic, right? Customer retention is not just like making sure you could do this if you wanted to. No, it becomes critical. This needs to be that retention number needs to be something that's owned at the top level, and it is retention is uh, what what helps to reduce that risk and what helps to really highlight for both the CFO or the business owner what really matters. And so the simple summary of this, right, is that if you now have multiple purchases, right, if I've now bought 3 pairs of shorts instead of just my first pair of shorts, that acquisition cost, you can spread it across multiple orders now. That original acquisition cost is not the second time, right? Your Clavio email to my inbox is a whole lot cheaper than the 14 Facebook ads you had to serve me to start with, right? Like that, it becomes so much easier to be able to close those sales and spreads that across multiple orders, right?
Let's put that into some accounting speak there. So
Yeah, sure,
retention is just CAC amortization, just with better behavior. I mean, literally, you're able to spread it out and take it and balance it a little bit better. So, it's not just sitting there in period 1. It's now in 3 periods. So,
Right.
it makes it look a little smoother. But
Right.
ultimately, it's still there. And,
Well, so one of the more important things too, right, is that it stabilizes your cash flow, right? Because a lot of that original customer acquisition cost you're paying out front, right? But as you now spread that revenue generation over time, like you get a little bit back and a little bit back and a lot back by the end, right? And so you start to see as your transactions in the later part of customer life cycle, right, as their second and third and repeat customer on this retention level, right? As that starts to just be cash flow that's going to your pocket, right? Which allows you this ability to plan, to manage, to understand so much better, right? It shortens the acquisition cost payback period. It helps to improve your contribution margins. There's so many things that secondary and tertiary and fourth and fifth and sixth purchases down the line are so valuable to you, to any business, and particularly e-commerce businesses.
Well, odds are you made that first purchase, you bought 1 pair of shorts. I got to see how they are. I got to see if they're comfortable. I got to see What does my daughter think of it? What does my wife think of them? And
Yeah.
then that second, third purchase, you're buying 3 pair, like you said. So,
Yeah.
they are recouping. So, hey,
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
right there with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, in this particular case, the first one was a gift.
There you go. Even
and
better.
and I'd been looking at them for a while, and I talked to my wife about them, and got a pair for Christmas one year as a gift, and then now I have like 20 of them. So I'm I'm the perfect example of this. The
Yep.
acquisition cost for me at this point is pretty negligible. Now, retention, obviously, it's really, really important. It fixes all these things financially, right? It makes that customer acquisition cost a little bit easier to manage over time. It helps to stabilize your cash flow. It helps to improve your contribution margin. Like those things are like very, very powerful.
Yeah, for sure.
But retention can break, and you can lose customers because of poor performance in other areas. And we've talked about that and highlighted that before. But it's worth reminding about those things here. In one of the easiest, simplest ways to lose a repeat customer is to provide them with a poor post-purchase experience. It's the person who gets the alert 3 days later of, hey, your order is going to ship in 4 days, and no updates along the way, and actually gets it in 7 days, right? That type of experience is just horrible. The person who goes to your website to try to make sure that, hey, my thing, I plugged it in, it's not quite turning on the way my automation tool, right? It's not quite turning on the way I was expecting for it to. You go to the help page and it just redirects you in a circle over and over and over again. And you just are like, well, where's the thing that I need, right? I want to be able to use this product, but I don't understand what's going wrong with it, and it's not working the way that I was expecting. That customer support is critical in this area as well. And then and there are just all kinds of other ways, Jay, I'm sure that you've probably had experience with, and our viewers can speak to as well, of poor post purchase experiences. But one other thing that can break retention is not actually having an intentional second order strategy. And so if you just let that person come into the door and be a first time customer, and you don't thank them for their purchase or put them in your Klaviyo feeds of, well, now it's been 3 months since you bought your super trellis. Are you how's that working out? Are you really enjoying it? Are your plants growing into it so well? Show us your pictures. Maybe you'd want to expand now that your plant's grown to the edges of it. Maybe you want to expand that pack, right? There's opportunity to intentionally have a second order strategy so that you can reach out to those customers that were first time customers, make sure that they've had a good experience, and entice them to be a customer again. Jay, I think that's probably again, it's the thing I'm sure we'll talk about more next week, is having an intentional second order strategy. But that seems like a really obvious spot where retention could break.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and retention doesn't just start the moment the box shows up. It starts from the time you get the receipt, that checkout. And
right.
my wife ordered 2 things on websites, and she had the thought that these things were going to be delivered prior to Christmas. The expectation was, hey, I ordered online, I chose ground shipping 3 to 5 days, I'll have it in a couple of days, plenty of time to wrap it and put it under the tree or give it to another family member in time for Christmas. And lo and behold, one showed up today. Yeah.
Jay, today.
Yes.
That's 2 weeks later.
It's 2 weeks later, and they were ordered 4 weeks ago. So, if you are shipping your goods from China or anywhere around the world that has to go through customs, let the customer know that up front, because she's angry. She's not going to buy from, I'm not going to mention, this
retention
company.
broke.
Yeah, it's just not going to work. So there is no retention in this situation.
No.
So, I am assuming it came off an ad. Yeah, I never would have. I know it wouldn't have popped up for me, but
right.
I doubt it. But I mean, she had to search somehow and have this pop up. So
right.
you put good good CAC out there. You got the client, and then you lost the client or customer.
That's right.
So I mean, that's just it happens. But I'm telling you now that if you're doing that and your shipping takes longer than anticipated because it is coming from the other side of the earth, let the customer know.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so again, making sure that post-purchase experience is a good one is a critical step along the way in retention. One other thing that you could definitely do wrong, and that doesn't necessarily break retention. This may actually be very successful in retention, but it's just not as effective retention, right? And that's just overusing discounts instead of making your product relevant, right?
Yeah.
So again, and if every time somebody buys a pair of shorts, you a couple weeks later you send them a, hey, I know you like those shorts. Here's 50% off your next pair, right? That becomes problematic, right? You're just relying on
that's just
discounts.
bribery.
You're just giving the product away. Yeah, right. Bribery. I love that. That's exactly right. That's bribery instead of retention, right? Exactly. And so a way to reframe retention, I think, is that retention is a system, not a campaign, right?
Right.
And so having a good strategy around how to retain your customers is important, and it needs to be strategic, not just a set of emails that go out without just trying to get basically like acquisition, right? Like where you're trying to get somebody in the door to give them that good experience. It needs to be more thoughtful than that. That second purchase is truly the real profit unlock, right? Because at that point, that acquisition cost, you've already sunk that in, and that the second purchase is significantly less expensive from an acquisition perspective. And again, like I mentioned, relevance is significantly more powerful than promotions. So,
and at that point, you have a true customer.
That's right.
At that point, yeah. So take it, get that second order.
Yeah. And so then, of course, there are a few metrics that are really valuable when you're trying to put this together. And this will be the last thing that we talk. One of the last things that we talk about today before we head into talking more about solutions next week. And so, so when you think about customer acquisition costs and retention, right, one of the most obvious things is what's your repurchase rate? How frequently do those customers repurchase? And there are lots of tools that are out there that exist. I know Shopify has a nice little dashboard thingy that shows repurchase periods, repurchase mapping, that kind of dashboarding, and then understanding how that looks by cohort, right? By your different type of customer, your different set of customer, maybe certain age groups, maybe by Facebook ads, maybe by Instagram ads, maybe by whatever it is, right? There are lots of different ways that you can evaluate that data and understand that can highlight for you the areas where you need to focus your original purchase efforts and also your repurchase campaigns.
That's a great
strategy.
Thing. Talk about your cohorts, Chris, because
Yep.
a great cohort to look at is your Black Friday, Cyber Monday clients or customers, and their behaviors as well. Because those are the customers you truly want to see place those second orders.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Because you've sunk the most.
Because they got the first one so cheap.
Right. You sunk the most CAC into those right there.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. On that same vein, right, the time that it takes to get to a second order is really important as well. And being able to maintain and monitor that can be really important, especially if you have a consumable good. Because if you know that your customers are going to need your thing again in 10 weeks, because typically your product is intended to last for 10 weeks worth of use, there's some strategy around when you can reach out to that customer again to be like, hey, I know your product's probably getting low, and I bet you've had a great experience with it. Would you like to reorder? There's a lot of information that you can gain from understanding when that second order occurs, so that you understand how long your product is lasting and when someone is likely to come back to the well, right? So you're not wasting your time 2 weeks later, right? I don't need a new pair of shorts, and I'm still living on the high of my last pair of shorts, right? My buttery soft shorts. I already mentioned it, and we'll talk about it again here. Is it's not just by cohort, but also by acquisition channel. So understanding not just the repeat purchase rate by acquisition channel, but also the contribution margin by acquisition channel. And this one can be extremely important because if 90% of your customers are coming through Amazon, your contribution margin may be significantly lower for those customers than those that come through your shop directly, because the fulfillment charges at Amazon are that much higher. Um, Now it's possible, I guess. I guess it's feasible that that could be the opposite direction as well, where maybe you need to promote a little bit more on Amazon. That seems impossible, but it's certainly a thing that you want to be able to make sure that you understand, so you understand where value creation for your business is coming from, right? That contribution margin. If you understand which acquisition channel it is that's really bringing up your bringing up your contribution margin line, that's really really important. Um, an overlooked thing that I don't know that people think about a whole lot. We mentioned it already, but your customer acquisition cost payback period. So, how long does it take? How many orders do you need? how many how many repeat opportunities do you need this customer to come back in the door in order to have funded that customer acquisition cost that you paid out at the beginning around Black Friday, right? Whenever it may be, in order to understand again how many purchases really are realistic here to make this worth your time. Um, when are you going to really reap the rewards of having spent that money up front in order to acquire this customer, or would it have just made more sense to let your growth be organic?
Well,
This is that's
you bring up payback period. So if you don't
Yeah,
know your CAC payback period, you just don't know what your risk is, and
right.
that's I think that's the most important KPI to look at here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's true that retention improvements will show up in cash flow before revenue, right? So
Yeah,
when you when you've started to have success in reducing that payback period, or in increasing that repeat purchase rate, right? When you start to see things like that happen, you know that that means that your cash flow is going to start to improve
yeah,
because you
for
don't have
sure.
to spend all of that upfront acquisition cost, and that's what
Yep.
we've been talking about this whole time. Um, Waiting for that top line confirmation, waiting for that revenue growth, waiting for that information is likely just too late. Um,
Yep.
and an important data point is that if you don't have this information, right, you're just making guesses, and that can really really set you behind because you're just guessing. You just don't really know. And so if you don't have customers that are cohorted, if you don't have acquisition channel data that's segregated properly, right, those types of things mean that you're not going to be able to make the right strategy decisions in order to have success with what we've been talking about today, and again what we'll talk about next week.
Yeah, you're just lying to yourself at that point.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know the details, so you're just telling yourself a story that it's all good.
Yeah. And so Jade, any other thoughts about metrics that matter, or things that we need to be looking at there?
I think the biggest thing here is more than what the metrics are, is that you have the ability to track them. And
Yeah.
that's where we see that really falling through in a lot of places because they're not tracking them. Even if they do have the ability to do it, they're just not doing it. And
Yeah.
again, you're just allowing yourself to tell yourself lies at that point because you're you're just guessing what reality is at that point, and you're just going to let yourself down in the long run if you're not doing that. So, yeah,
Right.
take the time, build the systems, and we've talked about that for months as well. Build the systems to track the data because if you cannot track it, you cannot measure it,
Right.
and you
And
can't
if
measure.
you
You
can't
can't
measure
improve
it,
what
then
you
you
don't
can't.
measure.
That's right. If you can't measure it, you can't build a strategy around it. Because
Exactly.
there's just no way to understand or whether you're improving if you don't have a good baseline. Um,
Exactly.
and And so that leads us into our final talking point before we head out for today, and that's the new e-commerce reality, right? Growth without retention is just slow cash burn. It's financial erosion. You're just giving away a bunch of money over a short period of time. Paid ads are an accelerant, right? So spending that money up front, you can juice your revenue. You sure can, but it's not a foundation, right? It doesn't strategically. It's not going to build you a very good base, not on its own. And strong brands, they're built on disciplined retention and that cash awareness that goes along with it, right? Not on paid ad success. And so this is not about doing more marketing. That's not the point, right? It's about making your business more strategic and more foundationally powerful in order to be successful in the long term. It's about making the customers you already paid for actually count, right? And so that's ultimately what we've been talking about today, and what we'll talk about again next week when we talk about some real strategies that you can execute in order to improve retention, to reduce that payback period, and all the things that go along with that. Jay, do you have any other insights or super exciting look aheads into what we'll talk about next time?
Well, I just want to say, businesses don't suffer when revenue drops. They suffer when timing breaks. And that's the key, is to be able to figure that out ahead of time. And it comes back to what we talked about 2 minutes ago. Measuring and tracking and knowing what's going to happen. So, looking forward, there are, I went through about 12 different strategies. So I'm looking forward to that. And, I'm going to hold that and just tease it. And
there you go. 12 strategies.
Yeah.
It's coming.
Yeah.
That's exciting stuff, and I really look forward to talking to everybody about it again next week. Thank you so much for spending time with us here today on the Rocks, the e-commerce hour. Jay, any final thoughts before we get out of here today?
Go Niners.
Go Niners, that's right. This might be the last chance. We might be completely eliminated by the next time that we talk. The 49ers play the Eagles this weekend. In what I'd say there's like 60% chances their last game of the season, but we'll find out, and we'll know for sure next week. I'll either be here sad or be here excited to go lose to the Seahawks again or something like that. I'm not sure. We'll find out. But regardless, you will know that we'll be here, and we're going to be talking about some strategies to help you get some acquisition cost wins.
Most definitely.
So join us next week as we talk about that. If you have any questions about the things that we've talked about today, make sure to reach out to us through High Rock or through our comments below. We'd love to get to hear from you. And before we get out of here, he's Jay, I'm Chris, and this was the E-commerce Hour. We'll see y'all next time. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time.